Hi everyone, welcome to Stop and Chat. Today we have Elina with us. Welcome Elina. Elina is a senior event marketing and operations executive with over 20 years experience on the B2B and association event management. Very interestingly, she is the founder of the Freelancer Business Community, a global organization that connects and supports the freelance economy through international events, masterclasses, and publications. This community helps freelancers run their businesses more effectively by gathering and sharing global insights for all types of freelancer scenarios. Very, very excited having you here, Elina. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Pedro. Glad to be here.
Elina, going straight into business. What had you start the Freelancer Business Community? Like, what was the driver? When did you do it? And what has been your experience through time with it?
Yeah, the answer is very simple, to be honest. I started Freelance Business Community because I saw the gap in how freelancers were connecting with each other and primarily connecting with businesses. And I also saw that there is a little understanding of how the freelance ecosystem functions in general. And so I wanted to create a space where freelancers could share insights between each other, learn from each other, and connect with businesses in some sort of structural way. What I also wanted, and I realized that freelancers potentially could collaborate with each other and build stronger teams servicing clients, and also level their professionalism and expertise by doing so. So eventually, by core business, I'm an event producer. So my initial goal was to build an event for freelancers and for the ecosystem as well, so that we could come somewhere at some point and discuss. And so that is continuing now for many years. And I think many people benefit from it. And there was also a personal need, to be honest, because as I started independent business, I had no clue what I'm facing. I came very unprepared. And this is why I want to share that message with others so they don't make this mistake.
Yeah, I think preparation when you start in your freelancer journey can be quite critical. Administration, it's not as straightforward sometimes. And I think current regulation is not making it easier for individuals and for companies to operate in this space. Have you seen the freelancer landscape evolving since you started in the early days looking and operating as a freelancer to where we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. If we take the last 10 years, freelancing has grown tremendously. This is both in numbers and in the way businesses engage with freelancers. So there's more acceptance of freelancers as such. I think the concept of freelancing is more explained these days, especially after pandemics. It's kind of became a norm. I see also more companies are interacting with freelancers in a more structural way. So it's kind of becoming the strategy to include external talent in the talent pool, which is very beneficial for freelancers. And we also see a big evolution in the platform side. More and more platforms are coming to the market. Almost every week I see a new solution targeting freelancers, whether it's from proposal making to banking solutions to some financial applications. We just recently made a guide about financial tools for freelancers. And I was amazed actually how many I came across, more than 70 of them. And we also see more niche marketplaces and more niche communities also, which are focusing, let's say, on specific category of freelancers. I also see more senior executives going into independent business, and that is something I think quite interesting. But at the same time, we see a lot of youngsters fresh from school, fresh from university, deciding that they're not designed for 9-to-5 work. They're designed for flexible work style, which I can only applaud because, we don't go through that journey to be stuck in a job, in a fixed one, at least.
Yeah, I don't think we no longer need to divide our day in 3 times, 8 hours work, 8 hours entertainment, 8 hours sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's much more commingled And we see a lot of the dynamics that you mentioned, especially around freedom around how people operate. Yeah. I think it's very obvious for the individuals why would they use and abuse these type of engagements. But what do you think are the main values for companies for engaging freelancers versus full-time employees? I always hear considerations around culture, for example, commitment. What have you seen and what is your experience on that?
On the value that freelancers
bring? Yeah, the value for companies, because I think the value for the individual, I think it's much more tangible. Yeah. But for companies, why do you think they get value for engaging freelancers?
I think we can unpack it in so many different ways, but one of the biggest value for a company, as I see it, is that they tapping eventually in an expertise that in any other way won't be available for them. Some people making this deliberate choice, they're not going to go for full employment anymore. And quite frequently, these are fantastic experts, highly educated, highly trained, with huge experience behind the bag. And so the value that they bring to the company is that expertise that they bring with you. And if you take a senior freelancer that's been working for 10 or more years, they were not working for one company at that time. They were working maybe for 20 or 30 companies. So eventually they're coming and joining the client with that baggage of insights from entire industry into one spot. And also what I like about freelancers is that while they work for one customer, they also have several. So the exchange of insights coming much faster. From my personal experience, I just love when I see something that can benefit another customer and I share this information with them, if it's not covered by NDA, of course. And I think that makes freelancer very flexible and adaptable to current situation. Mm-hmm. If something changes, they are going with the change and they are, up-train themselves, they upskill themselves much quicker, because they have to stay competitive. If they don't do that, they would be obviously losing the momentum and competitive edge. I think that's the biggest value for companies.
Yeah, definitely. That's a super interesting perspective. And what do you think are some of the misconceptions that employers experience when they bring freelancers to their teams? Because you mentioned like highly expert individuals, highly impactful, but there is a team, there is a full-time team in the organization. How do you see this dynamic operating?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and this is what I felt myself, is considering freelancer as external someone, when in fact freelancers should be brought into the team and be part of it. Okay, freelancers may not like extensive communication as you technically do with your employees, because they kind of try to be focused on the project and deliverables. But still, there should be a way to, not indicate freelancers as someone who is just comes and goes, but someone who joins the team to work together on a project. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And partly, companies keep freelancers slightly separate from employees is because they are afraid of information leakage. But that is very strange to my perspective, because employees can leak information the same way. There is no difference whatsoever. Everyone is human. Or that freelancers might not be reliable and, go and change the project or client the same day, which is totally untrue. Well, it could be true, there are different freelancers, obviously. Some of them are maybe not so ethical, but most of the time freelancers are focused on keeping the client as long as possible, because for them it's, recurrent revenue every month or every period, depends how they charge. So the goal of freelancers is to stay as long as possible within the team if they're treated well. And that refers also to employees. If you're not treating employees well, they will leave, right? So speaking of freelancers as just a human resource and not as a service provider is first of the things your company has to consider. But that brings me to another point, actually. It kind of was one question, and now we're going into a full discussion about how do we consider freelancer? Is it a human resource? Is it a business? Or is it service provider? Like, in which box you're going to put freelancer in your particular organization? And that also depends on the size of your organization. Are you a huge enterprise that you already have freelancer program and then you just go through the cycle pretty quickly? Are you a startup that hiring freelancer to work basically every day with you? Or you just have a simple request for, let's say, social media management, and then you just get freelancer to do that on once a week, for instance, and that's it. That's all what you want from that person. Depends on the level of complexity and the size of organizations. This relationship can be very different. And misconceptions coming from there can be also be different, obviously. So it's difficult to answer that question in some bullet points. I guess depends on the situation. But most commonly, if I would flag one, it's just removing the human element from this relationship. It still has to be, your freelancer still has to be a team member somehow in some sort of setup that you are employing.
Yeah, I had a question here which falls right into this, which is, what are the freelancers' expectations from the companies that are engaging them, especially from this dynamic, I think, of team. But what do you think are their main expectations from their, let's call it, customers? I think you want to bring the relationship closer. I still have a finance background, so I still see it very much on the business side. Yeah. But what do you think the freelancers really crave and want their customers to have and for their relationship?
I would say, and again, looking very deeply in my own experience, clarity, first of all. Very often, and we even see that on LinkedIn, like, I'm looking for freelancer and this, and then not a single detail. That means person hasn't even thought through about what exactly you want that freelancer to be performing. So clarity in the first place, then timely payments, of course, this is probably number one, as cash flow can affect business so dramatically. We know it by so many hearing so many stories also on LinkedIn and from freelancers in our community. Cash flow can affect freelancer so badly that you can actually even go out of business because of the tax prepayments that needs to be done and many other aspects. So human relationship is important too. Like, we're not selling chairs and tables, we're still building something together. So I would assume that human communication is pretty important in any business relationship that is being performed. Yeah.
You mentioned the guide that you're building and overview that you're doing of the what's out there for freelancers and this market specifically. What's your perspective on benefits for freelancers, which was something that was non-existent? It's starting to evolve slightly, but what is your view on that, and how can these individuals that tend to be underserviced from a benefits perspective, undereducated even sometimes, and I think your community goes right into it, can improve their access to?
Yeah, well, it's again question to be uncovered in from many different angles. We recently had a discussion in Brussels with policymakers about how freelancer, what should be the definition of the freelancer. And there were different perspectives, starting from, well, there are either employed people or self-employed or unemployed, right? So one of these cohorts should be freelancers. Then there are small and medium businesses. And small and medium businesses also have a gradation in terms of like income they have. Then there is gig economy, it's called, right? Platform workers. I have identified around 10 different profiles of how, where freelancers would be located, how they would be working, whether it's forced unemployment, let's say, or it's a deliberate choice to become a freelancer. And so depending on each of this scenario, there would be kind of different level of requirements for freelancers in terms of benefits. Now, if we speak, if we now talk about whether clients should provide any benefits to freelancers, it's kind of tricky, because if you look at freelancer as someone who's running a business, then do you provide benefits to businesses you're working with? Most probably not. If you look at freelancer as a human resource, then should you be equal with other human resources that you have in your company, like employees? But then I think freelancers, when they go solo, they understand that now they're responsible for their own benefits. Now they have to take care of their health care plan, their insurance, their trainings. So I don't think freelancers really expect so much of the benefits coming from a company. And I think if that would be a norm, then we would again enter maybe discussion of some fake independency, which we don't want. So I would say I have not heard freelancers talking about the expectations in terms of benefits working with the client. And again, if we speak of different clients, if we take a small company, a small business or startup, like, should they provide benefits? I think they're trying to cut costs. That's why they're working with freelancers. So perhaps the benefit they can provide from that side is access to systems. But you have to have the systems anyway to perform your work for that company. So that's kind of, normal. If we talk about a huge enterprise, and you're just trying to imagine if they would think a certain benefit would be helpful to freelancer, then they definitely can introduce. But I wouldn't say that it's required to demand it. Yeah. What I would expect happening is that this commercial companies who are thinking of protecting freelancer in some way would join efforts in talking to legislators about certain things that needs to be performed on legislation level. For instance, our first discussion, like I mentioned, on definitions was very interesting, but that needs to be developed further and see how we position freelancer in a better light, so that the policies that are being produced, targeting them specifically and not creating burden in terms of like crazy tax or cumbersome accounting procedures, like that just takes your time and nobody wants to do that. There are certain countries that are doing better than others, but there are still some that is just totally awful.
Definitely. So if you've been talking to policymakers about this, and you have a significant community, I'm sure you have a view of what the landscape will be for the next 5 years or so for freelancers. What are like your 2-3 main predictions that will happen over the coming years in this space?
I hope I would have a crystal ball. I would love to see more people going into freelance, and I'd love to see that independent business would not be hindered by these fake independency laws, for example, because frankly, I think it's just one way of creating obstacles for a company to engage with freelancer. Because frankly speaking, it affects only the company, not the freelancer. At least in Belgium, I can't say for other countries. For instance, what happened here is that I was forced into employment, being a freelancer, because the company said by law they're not able to keep me any longer. But I had other customers that I worked with. So by law, I wasn't a fake independent. It's just because I was working almost 99% for that company on specific projects. So that's not helping to increase numbers of freelancers or make them feel better. So I would love to see that's going away some way or another. But I think there is lots of dependencies to that law, including some tax accumulations from companies and many other things. What I would love to see that projects and initiatives that are run by freelancers are being supported. I unfortunately feel very sad, and especially recently knowing that one of the greatest products for freelancers decided to stop the operations because again of lack of support and for whatever reason they decided to cease the existence. And many other communities also going away because for that reason. So that's very difficult to maintain like a healthy environment and supportive environment if there is no support from commercial companies out there. What I would love to see also in the next 5 years, more dialogues with policymakers, so to put freelancers on the spotlight. And there was a feedback during our event in November last year that indeed it's a need. Policymakers kind of left alone. They've been lobbied by certain organizations, but they don't hear the voice of the freelancer. So that's eventually something that I would love to develop further. So hopefully in the next 5 years we'll see organization popping up that is representing freelancers in the policy domain. What else? I would love to see a tax burden release from freelancers. Again, here in Belgium, we tax as businesses, but we're not seeing access to business benefits that small businesses are normally having. Like if you need to go and find funding, for instance, if you need to join some sort of accelerators, you need to form a company. And that is not really the idea. If a registration as self-employed is allowed in Belgium, then there should be some benefits from that end, different from benefits from customers, right? We discussed it earlier. So I would say these things I would love to see at least happening.
So a lot around policy changing and trying to create or improve the status of freelancers and the community around it. I think that we have work to do there, and I'm sure communities like yourself and companies like Remote are putting their foot forward towards this. So I think hopefully we're building a better future for this more dynamic workforce.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experience and your views, and being so transparent in all the work that you are doing. It's super exciting, and I'm sure we'll be continuing hearing about you and the impact that you have in this community.
Thanks so much, Pedro.